Today we're going to be talking about elicitation and creating elicitation that doesn't feel like some kind of a technique or some type of a weird thing that you are doing. It becomes part of who you are and part of your nature as a person. A lot of people ask questions almost like they're holding a flashlight to someone's face, and you've probably experienced some version of this before in your life where someone's kind of asking you these very directed questions, which builds up this feeling of this person is maybe trying to manipulate or control me right now. And it builds this psychological feeling of reactance inside of us, which makes us want to withhold information, not be open, and not share as much as we might otherwise. Oftentimes when people are asking these questions, they're wondering, why does this person shut down in front of me? Elicitation is something that is different. It's how you get real information without creating pressure, because it feels like a normal conversation. Today, I'm going to be giving you a 3-part field method that you can use right away and start implementing in your life tomorrow to start getting extraordinary results. The first is going to be observe context. Second is going to be elicit with curiosity, sincerity, and confidence. And the third step is going to be stacking elicitation or relieving pressure with a clean pivot. And a quick ethics note, I think this goes without saying, but I sincerely hope that every one of you use this to leave people better than you found them. Don't be some kind of a weird creep with these skills. If nothing else, this will give you the awareness to be able to understand if someone's using these things against you in a way that is less than admirable. So our first step is we want to be able to observe the context, the social norms, and the behavior profile of the person in front of us. And before you do elicitation, you're essentially just diagnosing the room, because context is kind of like a set of invisible rules, which if you break the wrong one will instantly trigger reactance in the person in front of you. Now, the first thing you want to do when you're looking for context is think about, where are we? Are we in a public space? Is this a workplace? Is this a social group? Is this my best friends that I've grown up with? And the second question we want to ask ourselves is, what's normal here? Is this something where kind of quick, polite talk is the norm, or is deep conversation something that's expected within this general context? And the final question we can ask ourselves is, how much privacy exists? Now, privacy, or the feeling of a need for privacy, is a huge aspect of what's going to change what people will choose to reveal with us. Now, in the ops manual, the flow of elicitation starts with observing baseline, which is exactly what we just went through, is figuring out first what is the context, and secondly, we want to get into what is the behavioral baseline of this person in front of you. And really, if we want to know what baseline means, it's what do they look like when nothing is wrong and nothing is intense. Things that I want you to watch for are their pace of speech, their eye contact comfort, their gestural size. Are they really closed off? Are they the type of person that makes really small movements? Or maybe they're the kind of person that makes big movements. What is their emotional temperature? Are that they're going to be closed off, conforming, or are they scared? Or are they open, story-driven, and expressive? A practical rule I want you to keep in mind here is, if somebody is guarded, your job is to create safety and normalcy first, above everything else. And if they're open, your job is going to be to create direction and depth in the conversation. So step 2 is, now we got to actually get to the implementation side of elicitation. So here's the core principle. The more sensitive that the information is that you want to obtain, the more or the fewer direct questions that you want to ask. Because questions create this feeling of kind of interrogation pressure. So the question becomes, what do we do instead? And enter elicitation. What I want to give you today is the general framework that almost every elicitation technique is based around, and this is a human being's need to correct information. Now, first, you're going to drop a statement that is slightly assumptive, that humans are going to be really drawn towards correcting. So here's an example. Instead of how much do you make here, if you were talking to someone, I don't know, let's say in an Uber ride or something like that, what if you said, man, it seems like being an Uber driver must be such a good paying job. I mean, I'm taking these rides all the time and I see what the prices are on the app. I heard from one of my friends that you guys get to keep almost the entire fare. How would that person respond? They're probably going to go something like, what? No, Uber takes X amount of the fare. On a good day, I barely make Y. And you didn't pry, you didn't demand the information, they just volunteered it. And you got an extra data point that you didn't even ask for at all. That right there is the heart of elicitation. Okay, next thing we're going to look at with elicitation skills is the hourglass method, which is something that's really important for sensitive topics. So kind of like an hourglass, we're just going to start broad. We're starting off with a related general topic, but not something that is specifically related to the information we're looking for. Second, we're going to narrow into that sensitive zone where we're starting to gain the real data about the specific topic that we're looking for information on. And third, we're going to expand back out to neutral topics. Why is this important? Well, people remember the beginning and end of conversations the most clearly. This is something in psychology that's called the primacy and recency effect, and it's been super well studied for probably hundreds of years at this point. So essentially what you're doing is you're hiding the sensitive detail so that it's buried in the middle of that conversation. Let me give you a quick example of something that this might look like. Let's say first we start talking just about how, in today's day and age, the whole dating scene seems like it's getting a little bit weird with all of these apps and this hyper fixation on these almost kind of temporary relationships. And we just open with a general elicitation like that, which is going to start the cascading effect of this conversation. Typically that person is going to open up, or they're going to share some piece of confirming or disconfirming evidence about that. And now the conversation has started down this pathway of narrowing in, which is our next step. And maybe the next thing we say after that is, yeah, I had an ex who really hated dating long distance. So again, this is encouraging that person to now open up about specific relationships they may have had in their life. So now we get to the elicitation stage of the conversation. And when we're eliciting, it might sound something like this. Yeah, it sounds like your last situation, and I could be wrong, but just from what you were sharing, it sounds like it had a pretty sharp ending. And this is the crux of where we're starting to gain the more sensitive information that, had we opened up with at the very beginning, simply would have created reactance and the person would have shut down and probably not shared any information. And finally, we can expand. So now we're coming out of the hourglass. Maybe we say something like, yeah, anyway, people these days are so different with commitment. Hey, have you seen X new reality TV show? There was this hilarious girl that the guy was dating on it. And so now we're just on to a new topic of conversation by tying into kind of the tail end of the last one. And if we've done well, especially in settings like interrogation or some type of a situation where we want sensitive information that we don't want the person to even be aware of that they shared, this is a very critical aspect to moving on in a way that's not going to create remuneration from the individual that we're speaking with. Okay, now the final step of elicitation is learning how to stack it. So once you get a thread, once we are on a train of information with elicitation that we're interested in, you essentially have two moves. The first one is you can stack the elicitation in order to gain more information about the same topic. It is not uncommon for the first elicitation statement to incur a really short response. Maybe the person just says, yeah, maybe, sometimes. But if you're a confident operator, you're not going to be thrown off by that. You're simply going to reorient, pivot, and stack another elicitation statement as long as the social context feels acceptable to do that. So you can stack elicitation exactly like this. First, maybe you elicit a fact. Second, you might try to elicit a story. And third, you could work on eliciting emotions. So eliciting a fact could be something like a statement invite correction, right? Asking the person to correct a piece of evidence. The elicitation story could look like one of the other examples that we walked through of, hey, can you walk me through that for a minute? And the third, eliciting emotion, is really where we get into the emotional recall. And there's all different kinds of ways we can do that, from sharing our own experiences to maybe even just noticing or observing the emotional impact that it seems like sharing this has with the person. I want you to be able to understand when it's really important to pivot or remove pressure. This is another thing that many people who are studying elicitation and trying to use it every day, whether it be in their personal or business life, never fully get the point. Even after successful elicitation, we're being confident, we're being sincere, but we're on a conversation topic where we keep getting shorter answers. Maybe we see that classic guarded smile that's kind of just being socially polite, but it's clear that they're not very happy. Or maybe they just break eye contact altogether and begin staring in a different direction. Or we see their body language starting to close off, or their ventral orientation, their body kind of turning away from us. When that happens, we really need to understand when pressure relief is important. And this is a skill. It doesn't mean that there's been necessarily any failure that's occurred. The better that we understand when to release pressure and being able to do it quickly is a huge aspect of what's going to allow us to continue to build openness, to build connection, and all of the other aspects of the 6-axis model. But it's really not even necessarily this big manipulative, I need to control this person. It's also just that I can be a sincere, empathetic, kind human being and recognize that this person is maybe just not comfortable talking about this thing. And I don't need to feel like I have to be able to get this information right now. Anytime that we get stuck in that neediness or feeling like I have to have this thing from this person, we almost always guarantee that we will not achieve it. So remember these things. Elicitation isn't some kind of magic words. It's a simple formula. We're doing baseline, we're directing the conversation without creating reactants, and then we're understanding our pressure control and when to push that pressure and when to relieve that pressure valve in order to maintain a good relationship. So do this right, and people don't walk away thinking, damn, why was that guy interrogating me about that subject? They're going to walk away thinking, that was a surprisingly good conversation. That was so nice to meet that person. I don't know why, but I really, really enjoyed talking to them. This, obviously, you can use this in every situation that you could imagine, right? This can be used in networking or dating or sales or parenting or relationships, conflict repair even. If we fully understand elicitation, this can be a massive skill that we can use in de-escalation in general. If all of this has been a lot to you, if you're kind of new to behavioral sciences and studying psychology and influence, I want to give you something really simple to remember. So just think about these 4 key steps to successful elicitation. Number 1, use elicitation in a way that is socially normative and contextually relevant. Number 2, stack elicitation to narrow in around a particular subject or data point that you want information about. And number 3, know when to move on by pivoting or relieving the psychological pressure using the hourglass method. And number 4 is make sure that you understand and are willing to be empathetic and see the reflection in yourself of the person that's standing in front of you. Now, as we talked about today, who you're talking to is the foundation of all persuasive communication. And that's exactly why I developed the NCI2 live event. It's something that pulls from the world's most advanced profiling frameworks and turns them into something rare, which is a functional skill set that you can use in real life fast. So I'm going to be teaching the NCI2 live event in Amsterdam this May. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't just want information, but you want to leave an event with real world-class skills in behavior profiling ability, would love to see you there in Amsterdam. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope that you enjoyed it all. Take care, everyone.